Good morning, everybody. Thank you. This crew's actually awake. This is kind of a quirky, fun talk, as most of mine are. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of interesting stuff. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, so you'll have some context about how I got here and why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. We'll talk a little bit about us versus them. Who's the nebulous them, right? We'll talk about a penetration, and I want to look at it in three different contexts. First context is how the hacker looks at it. The second context is how you're going to see it. And the third one is where you will insert yourself into the process to maybe hopefully stop the penetration and prevent yourself from being attacked. If you have questions throughout, I can take quick ones, no problems. Please walk up to the mic right there so that the people in posterity can hear you. If it takes too long, we'll wait till the end, and I will certainly have time at the end. You can find me anytime around the conference. So, who am I? He read some of it. I've been doing this a little while. I also am the chair of build, so the network is partially my fault. I've been hacking and teaching for a long time, but my favorite thing is tell me I can't do something, and I'll bloody well find a way to do it, because that's what's fun. Josh, don't take a picture of me. So, who are you guys? Who's in this room right now? How many people are geeks? Ooh, here's one. What about nerds? Yeah, I'll take it. How about managers? Wow, look at the small number of hands. They all went up really slow. That was pretty awesome. Sysadmins. Wow. Network admins. Okay, you know what a VLAN is. Security admins. Okay, bloody well, everybody should have their hands up right now. Everybody, because security is everybody's business. If you don't think so, we'll talk about that. How about hackers? What's the definition of a hacker? Make something do something it wasn't designed to do to benefit some or hurt somebody else. It's one of my favorite definitions. So what's a white hat hacker? That's kind of me. I consider myself a gray hat. But a white hat hacker is somebody who learns all the stuff that the bad guys do so that you can prevent them to do it to you, right? You have to understand your enemy. What's a black hat hacker? Anybody? The bad guys. Who's the bad guys? Them, CIA. How about, let's just say TLA, right? Three-letter acronym, any of them, that'll work. Let's look who the white hats, who's winning this war, okay? That's the question I have in front of you. For every sysadmin, there's about 1 to 30 associates, give or take. That's changed here and there, right? How about network admins? There's about 1 to every 200 associates. Security admins, right? Real security guys, right? People that sit in locked closets and throw things over the fence saying, hey, go fix this because it's broke. That's my favorite kind. Who are the they, right? The bad guys. Is there a lot of them? Yes. These guys, right? Script kiddies, people that didn't earn the knowledge, but they can sure use it, right? Anybody play with Metasploit? Anybody can play with Metasploit. It's really, really easy. Bored college students, anybody remember the Morris worm? Oops. Right? Hacktivists, foreign governments, and not so foreign governments. Right? Organized crime. These guys are actually really scary because they're what we call an advanced persistent threat. They're not going to give up. They're out there to get the money out of you or change behavior or something like that. So the question is, are there more of them than us? Really? You think so? You think there are more bad guys than there are people trying to maintain systems and use them? Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's way more people that have mobile devices, that have IoT devices that really don't want them hacked. But there's a small number that really do want to hack them. Right? And then you've got these guys. Right? Are users a vector? Yeah. If you don't believe it, come to my social engineering class. I will absolutely demonstrate that. Right? So we're ahead. Right? We're bored at work. We have nothing to do. Right? Is that true? I'm going to start pointing at people. No. No. Why? Why are they ahead? There's so many more of us. How come they're ahead? Why? Because they have nothing else to do. Maybe. we're certainly not ahead. I mean, first of all, it's a target-rich environment, without a doubt, right? There's way more things to hack than there are things to protect, that are protected, rather. So for instance, what happened with the DNS thing, about 3 weeks ago? What'd they hit? IoT devices, right? There's tons of them, lots of them. You could arguably say millions of them. And they're an easy target, right? So let's go over what you guys protect. Let's look at your security footprint a little bit and start to think about it in the terms of, I'm a hacker. How much space do I have to work in? Well, for network connections alone, there are, and I never read this number, a lot of MAC addresses, right? And those all represent a device. We shouldn't be out of MAC addresses until about 2100. But even then, a MAC address is behind a router. You can change them. If you don't, anybody here pay for Wi-Fi on an airplane? Anybody here know you can change your MAC address on your Mac? Put that information together and you might not pay for Wi-Fi on an airplane. There's IP addresses, right? We're out now-ish. I think the official word is you're out. You can't have any more. There's IPv6, right? There's 3 point something times 10 to the 23rd IPs per square inch on the planet. So I don't think we're going to run out of them anytime soon. So there's a lot of them. But this is a little scary right here, right? 80% of households have at least one computer. This doesn't count IoT. This does not count all the mobile devices, which there's been a huge explosion of, right? How many people literally know people here, more than 10 in their lives, that don't have a cell phone? Yeah, look at this. Start thinking about that. All of those things are what? What is a cell phone? It's a computer. What's unique about it? Its address. What else? How many radios does it have on it? 2, 3, 4, right? Anybody know what forwarding means? If I can get in one way, I can come out another. They're pivot devices, and everybody's carrying one. And if you don't think people can pivot on them, yeah. How about this? This is the network traffic for the last 1, 2, 3 years and for the next 3 years. 72.5 exabytes per month, and we're looking at 194.4 by the time we get to 2020. Now, what generated all that traffic, all the devices? Do you think those devices are now targets? Absolutely. How about this? Software. Is software a target for a hacker? Anybody see anything in here that might have been attacked, hacked, broken into, misconfigured from boot? Anything at all? Anybody remember SunOS? The rhost bug? I mean, the list goes on and on, right? So all of these are potential vulnerabilities. These are all potential vectors for an attacker. How about this? Anybody see any services in here that might have been attacked, hacked? Are these all vectors? Sure they are, without a doubt. How about applications that users use? Anybody see anything in here that might have been attacked, hacked, and penetrated? Several times over if it's Flash. I mean, really. And then the users use web applications every day too. Anybody see anything in there that might have been attacked, penetrated? All these things are vectors, right? So it becomes increasingly harder for us to stop hackers because the space that they have to work in is massive. They have all this opportunity. And then you got these guys, right? Users are the #1 vulnerability in any organization. If you don't believe it, come to my social engineering class. I will absolutely demonstrate that. It is so easy to social engineer people, it's disgustingly bad. At work, we have about 85 million people in the office that have computers. That number's gone way up. This was from 2013. So this number's gone way up, way up. This is the number of people in the country that have computers. Again, this was, I think that was about 2013. And that number's gone way, way up. So again, security footprint, the area you can work, it's huge if you're an attacker. How many users do this? Although these days it's what? FedEx. I'm getting spammed with FedEx mails. Hey, the weather's really bad in Umpty-Frats. Click here to make sure your package is going to get delivered. Right? Those are so easy to do. If you don't believe me, go look up something called the Social Engineering Toolkit. It's a gift. You can do so much with it. All right, so how's the math really work out? So do we know how many hackers there really are? No, you really don't. Do we know how many white hats there are? How many people that really don't want to be hacked? Well, I'd say yeah, probably, kind of, sort of. But, 1 million, I'd say that's probably gone up since I did this talk before. I'd say there's probably a little bit more than that. It's become a little bit more fashionable and certainly more possible for people without a lot of experience or knowledge to become proficient at being able to break into things. Mainly because the tools are easy to get to, and we'll talk about it. But who has the advantage? The black hats, right? Absolutely. And what's our life like? We as sysadmins. Right? Suddenly your machines start running slow. You see bad speeds on the network, like say at USENIX because somebody's running BitTorrent. Yes, somebody was running BitTorrent. How about this? Your background changes. This is how I used to tell companies I had broken in. I would change the background on the CIO's desktop. Worked really well. And then sometimes you get this phone call, which is never a fun phone call to receive. So, yeah, I would say they are still winning. I would still say they had the advantage, right? But how else can hackers win? Is it hard to be a hacker? Why? Well, the knowledge is out there, right? Look at all these tools. All of them are out there. All of them are available. I taught some of them in my class this week. You can get just about all of them on the Kali Linux. You can find the rest of them. For those that have been around a while, DSniff, Doug Songs, that one would just sit there and listen on a span port for anybody, for the PASSWORD : and would record anything put after it. So if you use Telnet, FTP, RShell, IMAP without SSL, any of those things, it would just capture your password. That's a little bit harder these days, right, with TLS, but, TSL. But anybody think that it doesn't happen still? Brett's running it on the USENIX network right now. You might be surprised at what we found. It's a little scary. How about books? Anybody see any of these books? And yes, the bottom one is a real one. It's absolutely real. It's a little sad. How about these websites? Anybody played with Shodan? Anybody played with, there's one I don't have on there that's really obvious. Google. Try inurl/php/php.info. You'll find a ton of them, all kinds of them. Although the other day I was pleasantly surprised. I did try the one that tries to see if you've put your credit card number out there, and Google blocked me for about an hour. That was a good thing. I was happy to see it. That means that somebody's at least being a little more aware. Oh, just a note on these. Don't go to these from work. Both because somebody might notice and all the ads are porn. So, just saying. What about cert courses? Do you think hackers go to certification courses? Sure they do. Absolutely. Of course, we also have the inverse. At the hacking conferences I teach at, we play Spot the Fed, right? The easy way to tell is they always have the ratty jeans, the black shirt, and the brand new shoes. Right? What about conferences? Do you think hackers go to conferences? Well, yeah. I'm here. Do the math, right? And then these are all very common conferences. ShmooCon costs $165. Caroline costs, I think last time I went it was like 60. Anybody can go. And people are you don't necessarily see people drop an O-Day anymore. That's become a thing. They now sell them, right? Because there's money there. But you definitely find hacks and penetrations and all kinds of ideas at these conferences. They're very easy to use. So the advantages is still to the black hat, right? What other? We talked about the huge footprint, right? It would take forever for us to enumerate that, right? Well, hackers have a speed advantage too. Why? What do we all use every day in our lives? Those computer thingies that let you automate stuff? I mean, how fast can they really work? Well, Nmap can scan 255 hosts in about 3 seconds. You can find every host on the network, whether it responds to ICMP or not. Nessus can audit, well, and Nessus is now OpenVAS, right? But it can audit 255 host network in about 4 minutes. It'll tell you versions, vulnerabilities, ports, users if it can find them. And this isn't even Metasploit, which can penetrate a host as fast as I can type it, especially if it's a current vulnerability. When, for those who've been around a while, LSAS MS04011 came back around, I guess about 3 months ago. There was yet another LSAS vulnerability, and you could pop a box in as fast as I could type it. So it's a little scary how fast it can happen. Now you're thinking, okay, Branson, so this can do that and you have to type that in. What if I took this tool and fed it into that tool? That's called AutoPwn, and yes, it exists. And it will hack stuff all day. So everybody knows don't use WEP, right? WEP bad, tree pretty, fire hurts. Rainbow tables, landman password. If anybody still has any Windows 2003 or back stuff on your network, your AD server is probably running in legacy mode, which means all your passwords are still stored in landman as well, which means rainbow tables can eat them. John the Ripper can force it in about 45 minutes, but you can download these now off of that. It's about 17 gig. It's easy to get, or build them yourself. And then NCrack, which we were playing with in my class the other day, you can walk about a 100K word list in less than an hour on a vulnerable FTP service that doesn't do any kind of checking to make sure that you are a valid attempts. So if you have an FTP server up, for instance, I can just beat on it all day until I break in. If you have WordPress, I can beat on it all day until I break in. What else? Anybody know what an Md5 hash is? Right? The ATIs, and these are old numbers. The newer GPUs are way faster. I've built a couple of these and they're a lot of fun. But think about this number, 224 trillion RC4 keys. And that's with like one card. People can buy motherboards with 12 slots in them, load them up with cards and let it rip. So hashing keys is no longer safe either, especially MD5, which they found collisions in. Collisions in as short as 63 characters. So that means for a 63 character file, you had 2 hashes that were valid. It's a little scary. But the advantage is still the black hat, right? Do the black hats have rules? I have one rule, don't get caught. Right? Is that hard to do? No. They'll bounce through like Tor, they'll bounce through countries that don't care, or ISPs that don't care, right? They have absolutely no rules. 0, that's the list. Right, so the advantage is still to the black hat. So we're kind of up against a lot, right? And then there's these guys. Anybody know that? If you don't, ask the DNC if they know who they are. They're a little upset with them right now. We're not ahead. We're just simply not. And it's not going to get any better, right? The acceleration of the number of attacks that have proven to be valid has gone way, way up. I've got a slide here I'll show you in a minute, but the number of vulnerabilities and attacks, especially in the last several years, has gone up. And the bar for entry is getting lower every day. It's getting easier and easier and easier for them to break into systems. But how do we know that, right? That's a supposition. So I could be saying that out of my butt. How do we know we're ahead? Here's that chart. These are the vulnerabilities by year, all the way to 2014. So by year, we're close to 14,000 vulnerabilities, new vulnerabilities out on the network. It's not getting lower. And now you multiply that by the increasing number of systems that are out on the network, and we truly do have a problem, right? Here's another one that we know. Anybody know what this is? Not in my class? Anybody ever, how long does it take to patch a brand new Windows box? 10, 15, 20 minutes? If I stick it on my cable modem without a router, this is how long it'll live before it's popped. And they test this all the time. I've tested it, it's kind of fun to watch. Anybody gotten the phone call from Dell saying, your computer is hacking us, we need to log in and get on your screen? I've gotten that. I give them access to a Windows XP Service Pack 2 box running in a VM. It's a lot of fun to watch. It is. So let's look at all this. So realistically, we have a lot to do. We have a lot of problem. And you, as the sysadmins, will, I'm sure at some point, how many people here have been involved in a penetration? Good. Good in that maybe you have some experience and maybe you have some opinion. How many people have not? And you're sure? How would you know? So let's break a penetration down. How does a hacker work? Well, he does some target, does some reconnaissance, kind of looks at your network, will break in, will cover his tracks, and will do it all over again. He'll pivot and continue it. But how do they determine that you're a target, right? Maybe you have something they want. Emails, Hillary Clinton's emails, for instance. Maybe you're doing something I don't want you to do. Maybe you're trying to jack up the price. Anybody see what happened to the Boeing president? What, this morning? He made a comment about our president-to-be. Our president-to-be put something on Twitter and the stock price for Boeing dropped 2%. Is that a hack? Is that an attack? Bet your butt. Absolutely. And notch in the saddle. When I worked at NASA, the big thing the hackers like to do is send mail from a NASA mail address. That's what they did. They would break in and they would find a way to create a user and then they would send mail from that user saying, I broke in. That was a pretty consistent one. So they're going to do some information gathering. These tools are all out there. They're pretty easy to get. They're pretty easy to use. Google, it's just the best thing. Shodan is right up there. You can look at Netcraft to see bandwidth usage, to see maybe companies that would be advantageous. Maltego, see who's got a particular piece of software, a particular piece of hardware, a particular vulnerability, right? If you're a hacker, you're going to go after low-hanging fruit. You're not going to go after the front door. War flying. Anybody see the drones talk? What happens if you put a Raspberry Pi running Kismet on a drone? Anybody have IoT devices in their house? How do they talk? What encrypts the communications between them? What controls it? If I fly a drone over your house, can I own it? Absolutely. If you have a thermostat on the wall that heats and cools your house based on the occupancy of the house, and I'm a robber, and I want to find out which houses on the street are empty, wouldn't that be a convenient tool? How about social engineering? Right? Sarah Palin got hit with this one. She was enough of a public figure that everybody was able to guess her 3 or 4 questions about her history and get her password changed. Oops. Again, social engineering toolkit, very, very easy. And it's sad to say, but people aren't dumb, but they are easy to subvert. Very, very easy. Here are some tools that they might use to probe your network. Nmap. If you haven't learned that one or used it, actually spend some time with it. It's pretty useful. OpenVAS, Xprobe, Telnet. Telnet? Telnet? What can I use Telnet for? I connect to a port. I can pull information off the port. Anybody been around long enough that they use SendMail 4.2? Anybody remember the wizard command? Wizard command, you'd Telnet to port 25, type wizard and get a root shell. Oops. Metasploit, hundreds of payloads, and that's now gotten into thousands. Metasploit is a tool, it's a shell scripting tool that you can use to create payloads, you can attack ports. There's now a vulnerable Linux distribution called Metasploitable. Version 2 just came out, and so you can practice exploiting a host you know you can get through. Or you can just load up Windows XP. Serious, you can sit there and just bang on it. If you have a VMware in VMware or VirtualBox, set up a little network, bang. Bob's your uncle. Right? What are they going to do once they break in? Did I skip something? Yeah, so this is how they're going to break in. They're going to exploit encrack. So you can use Cruel to pull a bunch of password lists based on information you know about the company, and then put it on encrack or Hydra, and then start beating on a port and see if you can get usernames and passwords. Anybody see Mr. Robot? Yeah, that stuff works. I have broken into companies based on the banner that they had on their login screen. The information was right in there. I've broken into companies based on the websites, based on data that was stored in the HTML of the website that you couldn't see unless you looked at the source code. People are predictable, right? And it's a sad, sad thing. Once they exploit, they're going to then cover their tracks, right? They're going to clean out utemp. They're going to try to clean out your logs. They're going to install rootkits. They're going to hide your code. Everybody knows you can write files on a file system, then mount a file system on top of it, and you can't see those files anymore, but you can still get to them. If you didn't know that, go try it. It's kind of fun. All you need to do is know the inode. They'll obfuscate the network traffic. How would they do that? What's the easy way? Encrypt it. Send it out a port that you expect encrypted traffic on, say 443. Oh, you're looking at that? Well, you know, how big is an ICMP packet? It could be 2048 bits. There are tools I can create a network VPN on ICMP going through your firewall and route all the things through it. How will the exfil the data? There was one that they put out this the other day. You guys will get a kick out of this. They exfilled data out of the company by having the host stand up a host-to-host Wi-Fi network, and they took the username and password, ROT13'd it, and put it as the SSID. So there was nothing in the network for them to see it, but if they drove by, they got the information. And they're going to collect the reward, right? They're going to do it, use it part of a botnet, right? A Dyn DNS. What happened to those guys? Keyboard logging, a famous one. That's how Target, you guys heard about the Target hack, where they went through the AC customer. They put a little sniffer on the USB port, and that's how they pulled all the credit cards, because the credit card reader was connected via USB. Rocket science. And they're going to access to another tier for attack. Once they get through the DMZ, they'll try to come back in. Once they get into a user's machine, they'll try to do more. The Pentagon was hacked with a little USB stick. Guy went home, took a USB stick, plugged it into his already hacked home machine. It loaded up the firmware. When he went back to work, he plugged it into NipperNet, and whoosh. That was about 4 years ago. So again, we have a hard job, right? How were you going to prevent them from doing all of this? So look at it again, and what you might see if you are attacked. Doink. So I'm going to do this as a timeline because I think that's a convenient way to talk about it. T0, right? That's the beginning. That's when somebody decides they're going to try to attack you. Anybody know what that is? So, first thing you're going to do is decide, should you be attacked, right? And you have to ask yourself, are you a risk? How would you know if you're a risk to be attacked? This is like the technical idea of risk, right? Maybe you're a government. Maybe you're an internet service provider. Maybe you're the DNC. Maybe you have something they want. Commercial software, off-the-shelf software, a security company, say RSA. Maybe you want that key. That was a pretty effective hack. Maybe you're doing something I don't like. Again, governments, right? They've been nailed on any number of times. Political organizations. So when you're looking at yourself, and we'll talk about this a little more, you need to start thinking in the terms of, am I a risk? Part of it is you need to understand if you are a risk based on the information that's out there. Do you know all the information out there about your company? How many people have Googled their own company? Themselves. Their boss. The CIO. Their NetBlock. Their address. All that information is useful. All of it. Maybe you're running something I could easily attack. Anybody see anything in there that might have been popped? Once or twice? Huh? All of them. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Would you know if you're being evaluated to be attacked? How would you know? We'll touch base. There are some indicators that might tell you, but in general, you're probably not going to know. The next thing you're going to do is some reconnaissance, right? They're going to start looking at you, now that they've said, this is somebody I want to get. They're going to start looking for information, and you may or may not know. But you may see a business indicators like an increase in hang-up calls to your data centers or to your help desk. Requests for publicly available information. This is one I told my class. If you have a pamphlet, I've seen this. You have a pamphlet, and you go to the bank and you get a pamphlet or the tacky, wherever you're going, and it has email addresses in it. How many people here use AD? Right? And Exchange. How many people here have the 3 3 passwords fail, lockout. I can write a Perl script once I understand your username and I get a directory and bang everybody out of your company out of their email in about less than 5 minutes, probably less than 1. Oops. Is that a risk? Bet your butt. Anybody know the one account that can't get locked out? Administrator. That's right. You cannot actually set that on an administrator and lock it out. Invalid support calls, right? As a social engineer, I'm going to call in and try to figure out your word tracks and try to break them. This one becomes fun because there was one company I attacked, and they used headsets with wireless, and those are on 2.6 gigahertz, and they're not encrypted. So I could sit in the parking lot and listen to everybody's conversation as they were talking on the support desk. Anybody call the support desk and they say, hold on a second, I got to go check something? You know what they're doing? They're hitting a button, they're calling their supervisor. Do you think I could use the information during that discussion? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Unwarranted increase in valid web traffic. Maybe somebody starts scraping your site. When I worked for a book selling company, we caught somebody using this to pull our search results and then share them off their site and make money from us. Is that an attack? Sure it is. Absolutely. Increase in friend requests in social media. Business and associates. I can tell some stories on that. I don't have a lot of time for this talk, but if you're interested, come see me. This is easy. Look up a tool called FB, Pwn, or Creepy. Both of them are great social engineering tools against those. They'll start probing you, right? That's the next thing they're going to do. And when they probe, the risk to the hacker is now there's a good chance they're going to get detected. So you'll start seeing SynFin probe attacks. You'll see maybe your load go up because your web servers are starting to do more as they're beating on the web server trying to break in. You'll see load on a specific port because maybe they're trying to penetrate that specific service. You'll see changes in application logs, right? The size of this log might suddenly be many gigs bigger than it was yesterday. You might want to know that. Same thing with your mail log. These are easy indicators that you can use. And then they're going to break in. Once they get to the point where they're starting to test you, they're going to try to break in. Anybody here think they cannot get hacked? No. Does anybody know when they're exploited? Sometimes. Absolutely sometimes. Not usually, though. Worse yet, you don't know when that period is. How many people here have 1 week of backups? 1 week of backups. 1 month of backups. 1 year of backups. And these are all every day, every hour? Because if I hack you and you don't discover it for, let's say, 6 months, do you think your backups are useful? The last time I got hacked, and I've put boxes out there that got popped. Somebody, was working as an ISP, I had a WordPress site, somebody broke in through the WordPress site. First thing the guy did was shut off my backups and then proceed to delete everything that was in the Time Machine folder. Oops. Not a good day. At all. So you're gonna get penetrated. This happens. You will get broken into, one way or another. And you'll see change files on the file system. Your system will start to not act the way it used to. Maybe they start running Bitcoin miners. Definitely seen that before, right? And your network traffic may or may not go up. But then they're going to clean up. They're going to try to hide themselves. That's what I do when I break in. Again, you'll see missing information in logs. Maybe your last log suddenly has a 2-week block where nobody logged in. And you know for sure they did. Oops. And again, change behaviors and systems. And then they're going to reap the reward, right? They're going to do it again and again and again and again. And once somebody's broken in, how are you going to know you got them out? You're going to reload the file system? That's going to do it? You guys know that there's firmware on hard drives that can easily be subverted and added to. When I worked as a CIO for Silent Circle, our rule was if somebody took our laptop, whether it was TSA, we didn't care. If it went out of our site while we were on travel, say, here, have it. Give me a receipt that you took it. We don't want it back. Couldn't trust it. There's no way. So penetration is bad, right? How can you minimize the risk of being attacked? You need to insert yourself in the process. You absolutely need to become aware of how they work and what they're going to do. So we're going to look at this again, looking at the points of where you will break in. What are you laughing at? All right. Anybody see this? How many people get log mail? 200 a day or so, that's what I get, right? Do you read them all? Then why do you have them in your mailbox? Boom, yeah, you know what? You put a filter in that says, go to dev null. Get rid of them. Because finding this is a real challenge. And if you deal with this every day, you're gonna get to the point where you'll start ignoring pages, you'll start ignoring emails, and at one time there's gonna be a nugget in there you need to find. So the reality is you really have to baseline yourself, your environment, how things work. You need to understand it. Now, in a changing environment as we've all headed to in the cloud where we have more cattle than pets, that is machines you stand up and tear down, this has become a much more difficult proposition, but it's still reality, right? So where are you going to insert yourself and how they're going to decide to attack? You can't change the entity you work for. Well, you can if you want to change jobs. And you can't change what information's on the net. If you don't believe me, ask Beyonce. Right? So you need to baseline. You need to understand what information's out there about you. Go check the information services often. Google yourself. If you haven't seen Maltego, that's a free one. You can get it on Kali. There's a commercial or a non-paid version. You can download and install. You can put in an email address, a username, a phone number, an address, and it will build a tree of information about that. And it pulls from all kinds of databases. If you get the commercial version, it starts pulling for not visible databases like LexisNexis. Really useful. Scan the social networks for information related to your company. Know what's being said. If a hacker says, I broke into Umpty-Frats, would you know it? How would you find out? Examine your website, visible and source. I can't stress this one enough. I've pulled more word lists off websites and broken in because somebody's going to make a password that uses information that's common to them or their company. It happens. Propaganda, all your sales material. I've found paths in sales material before. I've found passwords, clear text written in there. Here's the default username and password, da da da. In sales, white papers, same thing. For the reconnaissance, again, you probably won't know that you're being reconnaissized. I made a word. But you should baseline. You should understand what reality is and then what a delta is from that, right? So monitor your application logs, right? Everybody's familiar with ELK. If you're not, go learn it. These are all other tools you can do, Loggly, Logzilla, Splunk, Uniscan. Monitor your system and application load. Come down to build and see OIP. If you don't think that's not a valuable tool for just kind of monitoring your environment, people remember things visually a lot more than they do textually. If you suddenly see a whole bunch of traffic between two hosts and they don't belong, it's going to show up there. It's an easy way to do it. Cacti, Webalizer, Mailgraph, Track. Monitor your service call loads. If you see them going up, you need to deal with it. How will you know you're being probed? Same thing. You must baseline. You must understand what your network should be doing versus what it is suddenly now doing if you're being attacked, right? Install an IDS. Those things aren't hard. There's a free tool out there called Security Onion. You can download it, you can install it in a VM, and you can start playing with it. You can start learning Snort and Bro. These are not that hard. There's all kinds of front ends people are writing for them now that make them very easy to use. There's base configuration files that you can install, right? Anybody here played with Little Snitch? It's a Mac tool, it's a firewall. It's really noisy when you get started in it. It's obnoxiously chatty. But after a little while, it becomes a lot less. You want fun? All you that run Little Snitch, fire off Skype. And watch all the places it goes, and it will scare you. Review your application logs. AW Stats, Mailgraph, Webalizer, Event Log Explorer for you guys on Windows. These are valuable tools. And it doesn't have to be, look at the content of all of them, just the size. If you see the size suddenly change, that's a huge indicator for you that maybe you should go look at something. These are very, very simple things to do. System logs, right? Splunk, Elk, Grafana, which is a great way to start graphing stuff. It takes a little bit to learn, but it's worth it. Because again, visually, you're gonna see indicators of change way easier than you will textually. Log watch on your kernel security logs. NTOP and NTOP NG. If you want to see NTOP NG, come down to the lab. I'll show it to you. It's really easy to install. You can run it anywhere, and it shows you all kinds of network traffic. NTOP itself, which is deprecated, I think is a better tool for this because it gives you graphs that you can use. Let's go with the penetration side. How will you know you're being penetrated? Baseline. Monitor your interior traffic. Don't put sniffers on the outside. The signal to noise ratio will not be useful. Monitor SNMP cable devices using Xenos and Cacti. These are your switches. If you suddenly see a port that's starting to send a whole bunch of traffic, that's something you're going to want to noise. No, but you need to manage your signal to noise. You need to look for effective change. System monitoring, right? Load and disk space. These are two that are critical to noticing change. One of the attacks I've dealt with is somebody loaded up a bunch of kiddie porn on a hacked WordPress site. I found it because the size of the file system went way up. And once I started doing a find -m time -1, I found a layer of directories and stuff I didn't want to see. Profile your internal system. Changes to key files, right? If you're using any kind of CMS, whether it's Chef, Puppet, Salt, I don't really consider Ansible in this pile, but Tripwire, Osiris, Subversion, any of these tools, they will keep a record of what is current, and if it changes, you can do svn diff and know that your etc inetd.conf changed. Really, really easy tool. The cleanup, same kind of thing. Archive your information to non-routable media so you suddenly know it changed. Now this becomes a lot harder and it's more useful in forensics. So you can figure out when something changed, right? Anybody know where they can buy green bar? I have no idea that you can buy it anymore. Isolate accessed machines. So send your files to a log server that can't be logged into externally. That's a really easy thing to do. It's not expensive. Monitor for change. Again, use CMSs. These are really great for this. In system integrity monitoring tools. Osiris is a little dated. Tripwire has been around forever. It's very effective. It basically hashes all the things. And then cleanup. How many people actually have talked to law enforcement as a context of their business? Go do it. Spend the time to meet the people that are local to you that you would be involved with if an incident happened. So you have some friendships, you have some professional relationships with these people so that you know you can trust them and you know what you're getting into. The FBI has a great group called InfraGard that's designed for exactly this purpose. And they'll explain the process, they'll explain what they do, they'll explain what you're going to have to deal with. It's worth the time. The ISSA, also another group. The ISC, also another group. Do security awareness training, because your users are what? The worst hole, right? Go to SANS. They have a fantastic building a security awareness program right on the SANS web pages. It's free. They walk you through everything. It's worth doing. So, in summary, let me explain. No, let me sum up. Somebody got it. The time to live is dependent on how involved you really are. Right? The key is the distance between T2 and T3 is really small. The opportunity for you to really notice that they're starting to try to penetrate your environment is very, very, very small. And once they break in, it's going to be a lot harder to find that they did it because they're going to start cleaning up the tracks. Bam. It doesn't take long. I don't know why I made this animation. Oh, now I know. This is where you want to be, right? You want to be the happy person. Insert yourself in the process. I can't stress that enough. I'm going to fly through these real quick because I'm running out of time. Review your reports. Go. Get your colleagues in the process. Have a security minute every meeting. You have a meeting, take 1 minute and say, this is a security precept we should all do. Use good passwords. Don't open spam mails. Don't leave my keyboard logged in. We used to have a rule that if somebody caught their keyboard logged in, we'd send mail to the team saying, I'm buying pizza on Friday. Worked great. Worked really well. Keep good backups and keep them in places that can't get changed. From experience, I can explain that one. So in short, stay involved. Security is a shared concept that everybody needs to be a part of. So when I said all of you are security administrators, you are. But as I said, the key to this is baseline. You need to understand your environment. Any questions? Thanks, you guys. If anybody wants to find me, I'm being billed the rest of the week. Come visit, have a discussion. I'd love to talk to people.